Greetings everyone, this is Tanya at I Love Iodine. This week we're talking about dandelions. I know they're common, they seem to be everywhere, but we're going to talk about why they're important and why they might be a very good way for people that are newer to foraging or really want to get healthier as a way to start. Again, with dealing with parasites, we have to keep the host stronger to fight off the parasites. So this is a really good one for that, and we're going to talk about that in a little more detail. But before we get started, disclaimer, I'm not responsible for any injuries or illnesses result from your actions. You're responsible for your own research, most importantly, use your common sense. This information is brought to you solely as an educational guide with the best of intentions. I'm not giving medical advice or anything like that. It is imperative to always properly identify a plant before you even touch it, let alone consume it. Use this information along with quality field guides, other reliable sources, and or knowledgeable forager to assist you, and never rely on any one source when foraging for wild plants. So dandelions, you might see them in early spring grown in your yard and they kind of take over, which is really great. I think they're fantastic. I've encouraged them to grow into my yard. And encourage them, I mean, whenever they first started settling into my yard, because my yard was treated when I first moved here 6 years ago. So it was perfectly grass and no quote-unquote weeds. I had to encourage them to come in over time. And there's something interesting that happened about 2 years after letting some of the dandelions grow in, that I actually had like a Frankenstein one that had like all this, like, I don't know, it like morphed or something. I made sure not to let those ones spread on. I destroyed them because who knows what happened with whatever chemicals could have been sprayed, and then encouraged the healthy ones. And after 6 years, I think this is the seventh summer as far as that goes, where it has not been sprayed with any chemicals. I feel confident to eat in the yard. I think technically it takes much less time to actually be organic as far as those standards go. And of course, I don't add anything to my yard except for the compost sometimes that, I create myself. Anyway, that being said, dandelions are really super good powerhouse. We might think that we know so much about them, but actually there are some lookalikes, surprisingly, and most of them are safe or quite edible themselves. We might confuse the leaves with chicory. If you want to see that, check out my video on chicory. We actually do a little compare there. Now, what we have with dandelions, these leaves don't have any hair on them. Chicory does. Or we might confuse them with maybe, say, wild lettuce. Again, not really going to be an issue there. That can be eaten raw as well. And again, those are going to, like prickly lettuce, obviously going to have prickles on it. So there's a difference. But there's a lot of variability with the shapes of these leaves. Sometimes they're kind of smoother around the margins. Sometimes they're super cut. I mean, dandelion does get the name from the French Dandelion, which means like lion's teeth. And this dandelion, like a lot of other awesome plants, is in the Asteraceae family, which is commonly called the Aster daisy or the sunflower family. Now, dandelions are not native. They were brought here by the European settlers because of their edible and medicinal value. This plant has been used for a very, very, very long time. In fact, whenever they named this one, as far as, a few hundred years ago when the botanists came through and started really classifying the plants, they gave this one the name Taraxacum officinalis is another way that you would say the medicinal. So the thing is with that is that this does have like hundreds of years of medicinal and edible uses. You can even buy these in stores as well. Now, what I want to point out is you see that on this picture here, we have a nice little flower down at the bottom, and we also have this white seed ball here. That's actually called in Britain a clock. So we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. We don't eat that. We can eat all other parts of this plant. And what we're going to use is the leaves, the roots, or the flowers, depending on what your purposes are. And we're talking about there are like Western dandelion, there's different varieties, but this is the common one. So you might see some that have a little bit of differences. This is not the only dandelion in existence. And you might see some dandelions that have some, there's like a red seeded one that'll have some red colorations in the stems and stuff like that. Not uncommon to see. But regardless of which, those are all going to be edible in a similar fashion as well. The leaves, how you can consume them: raw as a salad green, steamed, sauteed, juice blended. Roots, boil as a vegetable. Again, it's best to have the roots after the first hard frost, but in this case, these are perennial. These are going to keep coming back year after year. Unless you really get it early in the first season, they're probably going to be pretty tough, pretty kind of, rugged and things of that nature. But if you're in a desperate situation and you need food, you got to go with what you got. You can also roast them, too, as well. Cook them just like you would carrots. I would recommend, cooking. I mean, I'm sure you could juice this raw. I'm not sure what it would particularly taste like. But how the roots are typically used is they're roasted and then they're ground as a coffee substitute. If you're familiar, chicory is used in a similar fashion. Now, neither one of those have any caffeine in them, but they are very healthy and they are good alternatives and do get that flavor. Now, the flowers are a really interesting way. It's one of my favorite ways in the spring, because even though the flowers will kind of pop up again in the fall, there'll be like a little bump, not as significant as in the spring, at least not where I live in the mid-Atlantic states of the United States. There will be a few. And with respect to that, the flowers are just amazing. So when there's a whole bunch of them, my yard is actually pretty overtaken because I've encouraged them to grow over time and, mowed around them. Literally, my yard has been clean for 6 years with no spray. It was sprayed before I got here. And it was weed free, and weed in quotes. I, of course, mowed around the dandelions to encourage them to grow and kind of encourage a lot of other things to grow as well. In the spring, it's really nice because you'll have the yellow dandelions and you'll have a lot of the violets that'll grow. So you get that nice contrast of the complementary colors of the purple and the yellow. But anyway, back to the flowers. They're really kind of not so bad raw as like a little nibble and stuff like that. I think it's a good way to get in touch with nature. Remember the pollen is what the bees are collecting, so you're kind of getting it firsthand. Of course, a smaller amount, things of that nature. But it is quite good. I don't like chicory flowers, but I do like the taste of dandelion flowers raw. But the nice way is to make fritters out of it. And what people will do is they'll take each of the flowers. Now, again, you want to collect them and be ready to go. You want to make sure that your flowers and everything is however you're making your batter. I have my way of doing it. And but anyway, just think about a pancake batter. Some people use cornmeal, some people use flour, some people use a combination thereof, depending if you have a lot of gluten in your diet, depending on what you're into and what you have on hand. Anyway, you should be able to make a batter. I mean, they're pretty straightforward. If you don't know how to do those, I highly recommend getting some cooking skills, some culinary skills, and learning how to do some basic things like that. Anyway, with your fritters, you can dip them in and then fry them on, the griddle or in a pan, however you do things. I do highly encourage you to use polyunsaturated fats like olive oil. They will break down and they do create free radicals, which have been shown scientifically to be carcinogenic. And we don't want those. They oxidize. And we want antioxidants in our diet. That's why we have vitamin C and all other things that we have, the polyphenols that have antioxidant properties, because oxidation is bad. It's like rusting. We don't want to oxidize. Anyway, that being said, I do treat myself in the spring to a large collection of the flowers, and I do make pancakes out of them. And I get tired of the idea of fritters like one at a time, so I just dump all the flowers into a batter and then cook them all up and eat them. And they're very, very good. My body does enjoy those a lot. They're very healthy, and I look forward to those a lot. Now, of course, you can make, there's dandelion wine. You can make wine. I'm not the person to talk to about making alcoholic beverages. I don't drink wine. It's just not my thing. Not a particular fan, but I'm sure it would be great. I have made mead, which is a honey kind of alcoholic drink, and, that was all right. But I'm not, it's just wine is something that just doesn't, work for me, so I don't know how to make it. And anyway, the leaves, as far as medicinally, again, not giving medical advice, but this has been proven to have medicinal uses for centuries, and of course in scientific literature. The leaves are diuretic. They help stimulate the appetite, as things that are bitter will do. Now, the leaves are going to get more bitter after the flower appears, so you really, if you're adverse to bitter foods and you're not accustomed to them, get the leaves in the early spring before the flower appears. But maybe get accustomed to bitter foods. They're very good for you. It's going to help increase bile production, help with digestion, and we really do need to do that. We need liver support. We need kidney support. Diuretic properties typically will lend themselves well to kidney support. The flowers have been shown to be antioxidant. I mean, they just look so sunny and like fun anyway. Of course, when you fry them, you kind of lose a little bit of that, so make sure you're using a heat-stable oil. Now the root, you can make a quote-unquote tea out of it, but really what we're doing is making a decoction. That's what the technical term would be in herbalism. Or if you want to do an alcohol-based tincture, that's a really good option as well. I like making tinctures. It's the way I get my alcohol, I suppose. You don't really obviously get that much in that way. But it helps with detoxification, especially the liver and the gallbladder. The stems can be used for, bushcraft or medicinal purposes for things like warts and skin eruptions. If you're out there and you need a little bit of help and can't get to your traditional modern medicine, that's a good option. You can also make a glue. It's not the best glue, but it's better than nothing. So that's something you can use. This is, of course, high in vitamin A and C, calcium, iron, and magnesium. So these are really a nutritional powerhouse. Really do encourage people to get to know dandelions. And if you're doing a parasite cleanse, what we have to do is we really do need to strengthen the host. That's very, very key. And also, if you do have parasites or have a history of parasites in the past, as I did, it just destroyed my nutritional storehouses. I had osteopenia, which is en route to osteoporosis. So I was right there where my bones were deteriorating, in my 30s, in my 40s now. And very significant damage was done because of the parasites, acidifying my body. So my body was pulling the calcium out of my bones to keep my pH at a level that wouldn't be lethal as a last ditch effort. So I had a lot of recovery to do for years to rebuild back once the parasitic infection was taken care of. But there's still a lot of building back, and I always have to be mindful of that I probably will have to continue for the rest of my life being a little more diligent, because once they do damage, it's very significant. And you never know. We really do need to be fighting off parasites on a regular basis, because if we're eating food or just living or drinking water, we can be exposed to anything from protozoan parasites to obviously larger helminths as well. Sorry about my phone dinging, but that's just the way things are right now. And anyway, so I think that this is a very good plant to incorporate into an anti-parasitic lifestyle for the fact that, one, it's free, it's easily to identify, it's basically everywhere, and it is around for a very large portion of the year. And also you can collect it, dry out that root, save it for later. Tinctures, once you make them, they last for a very, very long time. We're talking years. And these are really good ways that we can actually get kind of in touch with nature, get a better appreciation. Of course, get your foraging from a safe place, from a safe resource as well. It's very important. Don't get from any pesticide filled yards or chemicals, or from railroad tracks, or where they spray for anything, or where there's chemical, like petroleum based chemicals or things like that along the road, whatnot. Anyway, but I think this is a really important plant, and with the fact that it's free, high in nutritional value, and it tastes delicious. It takes a big part of it as well. So now we're going to look at some of the lookalikes before we go outside and see what it's looking like in September of 2022 in the mid-Atlantic states. Of course, I'm in the U.S. And really, there's the only real lookalike that's of a concern is coltsfoot. But those flowers are going to come out first before the leaves do. So if you see, this flower on the left-hand side, and it's going to be early, very early in the spring. It's one of the first flowers that comes out. And you'll see all these yellow flowers, and like the leaves come out later. Plus, there's like little scales along the side. That's actually where the leaves will come out later. Do avoid this plant unless you're in a survival situation. That's my recommendation, because this plant has been shown to have edible purposes in a lot of books, and medicinal purposes and uses in a lot of books. But they now know that it also has compounds in it that are toxic to your liver and that are carcinogenic. Carcinogenic means it causes cancer. So this is not exactly the one you want to be like, yeah, I'm going to go forage for that because I'm going to get healthier. Maybe in a survival situation, this is the only thing out there and you need to eat something. Yeah, maybe that's an option. And you'll deal with your liver and, maybe the cancer, it's a kind of a short-term thing, fix it later. But I don't recommend it. So definitely do learn the difference. We're going to look some of the illustrations in a moment might help. And of course, the dandelion is edible. Of course, someone could be allergic to it, so make sure you do your due diligence. And another lookalike you might see is hairy cat's ear. The difference that you're going to tell between dandelion is whenever there's a flower on a dandelion, there is one stem. There is no branching stem that's going to have multiple flower heads. If you see something like that, you're probably looking at a cat's ear, maybe a hawkweed or hawkbeard, depending on what they are. Now, none of those are problematic. Cat's ear is actually quite edible. The hairy cat's ear not so tasty because of the hair on it, but it is definitely has a lot of the same properties as dandelion, though has been shown to be a lot milder, which could be good maybe for children or people with weaker constitutions, like maybe the elderly. They need something that has a more gentler action. Possibility, maybe that's a good one for them. I don't know. That's for you to decide. Maybe you're a physician and herbalist, however you want to go with life. But if you look at this illustration here on the left, you're going to see that colt's foot. The reason they call that is because the leaf literally looks like, palm shaped kind of. It's very broad, like a colt's foot. And there's other plants out there called colt's foot. So just be very careful whenever you're talking about common names, because seriously, we need to look at the botanical name. Keep in mind, with botanical names, there can be synonyms, because some people have argued along the way. There's been a lot of transitions of flowers from one family to another, as more genetic testing has been done over the years. So make sure you just do your research. There's a lot of nuances and stuff like that. But dandelions are pretty straightforward. We're gonna have those flowers coming out of the central rosette, the basal rosette down at the ground. You're not going to have the leaves growing up on a stalk. If you do, you're looking at something else. You might be looking at Sonchus asper, which is another one that has yellow flowers. Or you might be looking at wild lettuce, or maybe something completely beyond that. And of course, we know about those clockster seed balls. Those are fun to play with, and they can spread those dandelion seeds, but I would not recommend eating those. But anyway, the leaves do have a lot of variability, but you're not going to find hair on those. That's a good way. You might find some red in some of these varieties, not uncommon. And the hairy cat's ear is actually pretty common in the U.S. The smooth cat's ear is more going to be in Europe, hasn't really been introduced that widespread in the United States. This just gives some color illustrations of the colt's foot. As you can see, those stems, they have those scales on it, which the leaves are going to be coming off of. And the leaves are very leather-like. They're very thick. And, be careful if you're foraging for burdock. I do cover colt's foot a little bit more detail in my burdock video. So if you have any questions, go back to an earlier section of the videos posted and check out burdock to look at colt's foot a little more detail. So anyway, this just gives some illustrations of the cat's ear. And as we see here, on the left-hand side, that is not a dandelion. Even though the flowers look very similar, that's actually a hairy cat's ear. As you can see, the leaves are shaped rather similar. They do have that kind of Basil Rose growing, but they do have the hair on them, and also they have the stems that are growing up, and then it branches off to multiple flower heads. That never happens with a dandelion. So as you can see here, they commonly call this the cat's ear false dandelion as well. So don't be surprised by that. I was the first time, so maybe if you are, that's totally cool. Anyway, this is just a close-up. The hairy cat's ear, the flower looks very much, there's a lot of different plants in the Asteraceae family. These are composite flowers, and there's some similar flowers out there of similar plants. Don't be surprised by that. This is just showing the bottom at the basal rosette. Look at all the stems coming out, and you see how they are branching on the cat's ear, and you see that they do have a little bit of leaves that are kind of growing up the stem as well. You're not going to see that with a dandelion. So anyway, as you can see, if you want any illustrations and maps, I didn't have any maps in this one. Dandelions are everywhere, so just trust me on that. Some of the illustrations, except for the ones in public domain, are found at the USDA database. Good place to check out. Now let us go outside and see what we can see out there in September. I do highly encourage you to use these free resources to get healthier. I mean, we have a free, foraging is just an amazing thing. It really does help you get closer to nature, and I find it very stress relieving. I really have changed as a human being since after having a parasitic infection, I've definitely changed as a human being. I mean, I definitely value things much differently. I mean, my If you follow my channel, and if you don't, maybe go out to my website, you can read a little bit more about it. If anyone is interested, maybe I'll talk a little bit more about the things that occurred, and we'll make some medicine this fall. I think that's where I'm going to transition in the foraging to, is showing you how to make tinctures, make some elderberry syrup, make some fire cider, and do some good things like that. Things that we can kind of get into the folk medicine. That's people's medicine. That's for everybody. These are things that we can utilize as people. I mean, things we need to consider, this is just a side rant, I suppose, is that most modern medicine, not all of it, but a lot, has been derived from extracting and isolating chemicals, the plant chemicals, and then using those or synthetically mimicking those in a chemical lab, in a chemistry lab, and to get the medicinal benefits out of it. Now, we can get a lot of these medicinal benefits from the original sources, which are the plants. Those are free to the people. Whenever you do isolate them and do all these kind of things, you can patent that. That's what they call that, patent medicine. And then you can, obviously make quite a profit. But this medicine here that we have is free to the people, and I am definitely wanting to share that information with everybody. All right, let's go outside and see what we can see. Greetings. Now we are outside. This is late September, so we can see what we have growing on. It's a little chilly today, but that's how life goes. We have some dandelions here. These are not flowering, but it does give an idea of what an older one looks like late in the fall. Here we have one that the leaves are not as deeply cut as some of these. Now, some of these leaves are tender enough that you could easily use these as salad greens with no problem. More the ones, of course, toward the center, not toward the outside. Those are going to be the tougher ones. And it's good to know where these are, because if we want to get that root, we want to wait till that first hard frost to come out and get these. These are really nice specimens. They've been here for a few years, encouraging them to grow. And there's a few more alongside the house as well. Over here we have a little flower, so these do flower even at this time. Now, if I wouldn't have mowed here, it would have been much bigger. Of course, we really don't want to do much with this one. It's just for observational purposes only. Again, we have a single flower on a single stem, hairless, smooth. If we were to, we can, because I have enough growing in the yard. We see that milky latex there, hollow. It's what you're going to be looking for to make sure that you're getting a positive identification of that. Now, again, if you're making this fritters, you want to get these bracts off and just take the head, but not too much of removing the bracts to where all the petals fall apart. So just enough to keep it intact. So that will definitely, hopefully, help with your identification of dandelion, one of the best plants out there. And it is a resource for many, many, many months, not just the springtime. How beautiful that is. And with respect to everything, I hope you like this video. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment. I will be adding more content to my website as the months go on. I have been taking a break from that, doing other things, but I will be getting back to that. Also, I'll be doing these videos for Foraging Fridays every other Friday to allow for more time to be discussing parasites and making some elderberry syrup. We need to strengthen our immune system. One of the best ways we can get rid of parasites and prevent parasites is keeping our immune system strong. Parasites do actually cause autoimmune disorders, and autoimmune is not the correct term for it. Your body is reacting to an outside pathogen, but if the doctor doesn't diagnose the parasite, they'll think that your body is attacking yourself, but it's not. It's trying to attack the parasites. But as we know, parasites are a very neglected medical issue all around the world, including the United States and other developed nations. Anyway, I hope that helps. We'll continue on. All right, peace and love. Stay strong. Stay healthy. Until next time.